We are live.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Kilgore, Chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to the February 12th, 2024 remote meeting. All council, committee members, and staff are participating virtually. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. And we are streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have the option for the public to listen live by phone. And for those of you out there today, we'd like to welcome you. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. And to call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801. Meeting code 8187. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live at this point. At that time, speakers who wish to speak, please press star 3 to enter into the speaker queue. And at this time, I'd like to do a roll call and go through and introduce committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Councilman staff, as I say your name, please say a quick hello. Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Hello.
Councilwoman Maggie Ullman.
Hey, everybody.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good afternoon.
Assistant City Attorney Janice Ashley. Rachel Taylor, Economic and Development Manager.
Good afternoon.
Dana Frankel, Dana Frankel, who is the Downtown Projects Manager.
Hi.
And Planning and Urban Director, Design Director, Stephanie Dahl.
Good afternoon.
Oh, she is here. Okay, great. Hi, Stephanie. And joining us today, we have a few presenters who are outside of the city organization. From Buncombe County, Tim Love, Director of Economic Development and Governmental Affairs.
Good afternoon.
Okay, and from the Chamber of Commerce, we have Clark Duncan, who's the Senior Vice President of Economic Development.
Good afternoon.
At this time, we will start our meeting off with the approval of the minutes. Can I get an approval?
I'll make a motion.
Can I get a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time we'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Turner?
Aye.
Councilwoman Ullman?
Aye.
And myself, aye, and the motion passes. That was our number 1 item on the agenda. We'll move on now to number 2, which is a Mountain Community Capital Fund update. Rachel Taylor, who's Economic Development Manager, Tim Love, Economic Development and Governmental Affairs, will give us an overview. This is for information sharing only. No action will be taken on this item.
Great. Well, I will go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Tim Love, and I work for Buncombe County. Wearing multiple hats today, though, because I also serve as the chair of the Mountain Community Capital Fund, which is a partnership between the city of Asheville, Buncombe County, and others, and exists as a committee that has publicly appointed representatives, and I sit as the chair on that particular group. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll begin to share more about the Mountain Community Capital Fund. And so the MCCF, or the Mountain Community Capital Fund, it's a loan guarantee fund for small business loans in Asheville and Buncombe County. I'll get more into a loan guarantee as we proceed, but the key to note is that this is not a loan fund. It's a guarantee fund, which is slightly different. This fund was established in 2018, and it's a collaboration between many partners, including the 2 local governments on this call, as well as a number of community development financial institutions. The acronym there is CDFI. And the CDFIs that we're partnering with include Carolina Small Business, Mountain BizWorks, Self-Help Credit Union, and we hope to grow that pool over time. This fund specifically exists to help businesses that would not be able to sort of apply for traditional loan funds from traditional lenders. And for that reason, many of the businesses that come to the Mountain Community Capital Fund don't have collateral, which is often a major issue when you're seeking additional funding to grow your business. Additionally, a strong focus on entrepreneurs of color and borrowers with low income, specifically encouraged to apply. And I think you'll see the success of that as we move into the next slides and talk about some of the program outcomes. Next slide, please. Thank you. So from a program perspective, the loans that come through this pool are expected to be relatively small, between $10,000 and $70,000, with the average being closer to $30,000. A key point here, I said it earlier, but these are loan guarantees. They're not loans that are issued on behalf of Buncombe County. The loans themselves are held with the CDFIs. So the lenders do what they do, which is underwrite and issue the loans. However, the lenders then come to the Mountain Community Capital Fund for a guarantee. And what that guarantee does is it provides some level of coverage in case the loan were to default, so that the lenders can be a little bit more risky in their lending and take reasonable chances on businesses that have some success but don't have collateral, as an example. The average loan term is between 5 and 7 years. The success rate of this fund, it's based on what we've seen with other funds, and most notably the Mecklenburg Community Capital Fund, which had an estimated success rate of about 95%. And so said another way, 95% of the loans did not default in that Charlotte Community Capital Fund, but about 5 did, which is to be expected. In any loan portfolio, you'd expect to see some defaults. From a loan administration perspective, the CDFIs perform all of the loan underwriting. So we're not asking folks like Rachel Taylor or myself to do underwriting. We rely upon the lenders to do that because that's the work that they do. Additionally, the CDFIs are required to provide technical assistance to those that are taking the loans, as well as reporting. Technical assistance is really a key point of this. A lot of the businesses, all the businesses we're dealing with, are small businesses. We do have startups, but it's certainly not the overwhelming majority. But these are younger businesses that are looking to grow. And so as they grow, it's important for them to have a lender that can provide technical assistance so that these borrowers can be more successful. And, technical assistance could be, capital training, business training, how to manage, how to grow, how to build a CIP, these types of things. So that's our program overview in a nutshell. We'll move to the next slide, and I'm glad to take any questions as we go as well. So ultimately, proof is in the pudding. How successful has the program been? And so again, established in 2018, since that time, the MCCF, through its lenders, has issued 59 total loans. Those 59 total loans result in about $2.27 million in total loans across those 59 loans, which has resulted in about 196 jobs that have been created or maintained. As we talk about the demographics of the loan fund, you heard me say earlier that this loan fund is specifically designed for businesses that have no or low collateral, but also for BIPOC or women-owned businesses. And so you can see that bear out in the numbers. Of the 59 total loans, nearly 70% or 41 loans have gone to Black-owned businesses. In our Hispanic and Latinx businesses, we see 19% or 11 loans. And then as we talk about women-owned businesses, we see 27 loans or 46% of the total loan portfolio. Of course, when we talk about demographics, these figures could overlap. It's possible that we have a woman-owned, Black-owned business that are overlapping, which is a good thing. So these are some of the stats of the fund. If we move to the next slide, we can continue to talk about, for those that are watching or those that want to share information about the MCCF. So if you're a small business and you're interested in applying, you don't apply through the MCCF, you apply through a traditional lender. Again, all of the background paperwork, all the underwriting, the administration goes through those lenders. So you would reach out to Mountain BizWorks as an example. In terms of, the kind of collateral required, the fund is specifically designed for those that have little or no collateral. But for those that are asking, what are examples of collateral, that's cash, real estate, personal property. And when I say personal property, thinking about business personal property, the equipment that, a small business might have. In terms of additional information that would be required, we're trying to limit, obstacles to growth in this area, but also helpful to have, basic financial information about your business. The ability to demonstrate that you can make debt payments, that your business is viable, that you have some type of revenue stream, some history. So the examples of business viability here, time in business, what's your management experience, financial trends. All of that information goes into the underwriting process, which again is managed by our CDFIs. Finally, where can you go to learn more? You can Google Mountain Community Capital Fund and you'll get there, or you can click on the link. I know it's a lot to type, but that's how you can find out more information. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's next for the Mountain Community Capital Fund, I think the obvious, the fund, would like to continue to expand, and we want to see our loan portfolio grow. And so we've got 59 loans today with some really excellent demographic information, but we want to keep on issuing loans. There's additional capital loan dollars that have not been loaned out at this point. And so we want to continue to issue those loans. Additionally, would like to add new lenders to our portfolio. Our current lender mix is fine, but candidly, one lender is our primary lender and has issued all 59 of the loans. And so we'd like to see additional lenders get into the game. Those different lenders bring different expertise, but also bring sort of different networks and their ability to engage in the community and work with businesses. So that's kind of our next steps. I believe our next slide, Katie, is just, are there any questions? I'm glad to take any questions, and I see Council Member Kilgore has one.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. I want to ask you a question. Basically, with the interest rates, what are the interest rates normally that these clients would get through the program?
Sure. The interest rates are favorable and have changed a little bit over time as the market has changed. And so I'm glad to get final numbers back to you. But, in general, what we see sort of a 5% to 8% interest rate. But there's also, in terms of how that loan is paid back, there's often relaxed payments on the front end. So, interest-only payments, as an example, for a period of months, just to try to ease the business into its growth trajectory.
Okay. And also, what would your balance be? What's your normal running balance that you have to work with when guaranteeing these funds? Because that's a program, I think, in conjunction with the City of Asheville, Buncombe County, and I'm just wondering what type of budget are you working?
Sure. So the Mountain Community Capital Fund received funds in the beginning from the city and the county, and then over time has received additional grants from Dogwood, as an example, and then most recently received ARPA funds from both the city and the county. And so no general fund, allocations on any type of recurring basis or anything of that nature. So I'm just pulling up our balance as we speak. Got it. So we have about, as I said, $2.27 million that have been lent out. And then our remaining balance that we could issue would be, I think, 2.9 million. So, we've got about $700,000 still left that could be issued, give or take. What I would add is, that number changes all the time. The way, these are loans that are paid back on a recurring basis. And so as those payments are made, the balance changes and we have sort of more funds to lend, if you will. So that changes over time.
Thank you.
No problem.
Does anyone else have any? Councilwoman Coleman?
Yeah, I had one question. Tim, could you go back to the summary slide with all the numbers? That's where my head kind of locks in. Yeah, okay. I just want to sink that in. And how long has this been operating?
We started in 2018. And then, of course, the pandemic has impacted our performance, but we still feel pretty confident in what we've done thus far.
It still seems pretty incredible. I mean, just thinking of the scale of things, my husband worked at Home Trust Bank for a long time. And, that's a small community, a regional lender, right? And then thinking about other CDFIs that I've looked at and kind of seen their performance and what type of money they're getting out the door. Part of what seems so special about this loan is the relatively small nature, because you get to this point when you're seeking funds that the smaller the loan, the harder it is traditional institutions to give you the support you need to get it and to get it out the door. That's why CDFIs are such an important vehicle and mechanism that I hadn't seen this data before. And I'm pretty impressed and excited for our community that we've made this much progress in this amount of time. So just wanted to share some excitement around that with everybody.
I appreciate those sentiments. And, I think there's a small business pipeline and this kind of fits in the middle towards the front, at the very beginning, just helping coach people on the idea of being an entrepreneur is like step one. And then sometimes there's sort of these supporting grants, these little jelly beans that help a business kind of formulate, an idea. Next up, is sort of where we're at, where you're ready to take the next leap. You've proven that you've got a business idea, but you need a little bit of capital to buy, that extra piece of equipment or that retail space or whatever it is. And so this allows a lot of our businesses to do that. As we think about next steps, our committee, our Mountain Community Capital Fund, is interested in making the loans a little bit bigger. Right now we cap out around $70K. And I think we'd like to see that go up to 100, maybe 125K. One, to keep up with inflation. The market's completely changed since 2018. 70K isn't what it was then. But also kind of giving our businesses some room to grow. Next up after this, there's another step that's super important. Now that you've grown a little bit, how do you really grow? How do you scale? Not to be Amazon, but how do you sort of take that next leap? And I'm excited about what those future steps look like.
Well, I'm hearing you kind of discuss the pipeline. It also makes me think about a conversation we often have at the dais on how are we using our purchasing power as governments, right? And we know that to get to the point where you can go through the transparent and fair criteria we use in government, it's not a first-time entrepreneur, right? You need to go through a couple steps of these pipelines. And so it's exciting to see, especially with the audience of this fund, that capacity building is taking place. And then there's another step in the pipeline where it's access to government resources, right? And being able to compete for government contracts. And I think pipeline development programs like this, and then us using our purchasing power, they all move towards that same goal of having a more equitable access to our economy. But it's fun seeing so many pieces of this pipeline being developed in the community. It's very different than where we were 20 years ago. It makes me really proud.
Yeah, all excellent. Appreciate the sentiments.
Okay. If there's no more questions, thank you very much, Tim. Greatly appreciate it.
All right. I appreciate y'all's time. I hope y'all have a great day.
Our next item on this will be item 3, Economic Development Coalition, which Clark Johnson, Senior Vice President of Economic Development, will give us an overview of the Economic Development Coalition work and partnership with the city and county.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Kilgore, members of council, and members of the committee. It's an honor to be with you today. In our time together this afternoon, I'll start with a brief introduction to staff and mission. I'd like to share some metrics and outcomes from our core programming over the course of the current 5-year cycle that we fund and deliver in partnership with the city, and then end with a look to the future. On the next slide, you'll see this year that our board will celebrate 30 years of public-private partnership and are really proud to maintain a rigorous accreditation of the International Economic Development Council. We are one of only 75 economic development organizations to have earned this distinction in North America. On the next slide, you'll see that it's a tribute truly to the talented folks I'm fortunate enough to work with. But please note how staff are aligned with key strategies of our plan, including expanding local industry and recruiting complementary industry that advance our goals for growing wages in Western North Carolina, growing workforce partnerships that facilitate economic mobility, the programs of Venture Asheville that build the next generation of Asheville headquartered businesses, and finally, Riverbird Research that leverages really best-in-class data analytics to support not only our strategies, but the decision-making of both our public and private sector partners. On the next slide, you'll see that we're really only able to do this work in partnership with our city and county partners. At the Chamber, it's 1,700 members and over 100 private sector investors in our 5x5 campaign. I should note that both City Manager Deborah Campbell and Mayor Manheimer sit in ex officio roles on our board, and I'm grateful for their service. So jumping into the next slide, you'll see the primary metric for our work, which is focusing on supporting or attracting businesses that grow tax base, that is sustainable, and quality employment for residents that exceed average wages in Buncombe County. And in our current 5-year cycle, those outcomes total $750 million in new city and county tax base and over 1,200 jobs at wages well above current county average, which is about $52,000 for comparison. It's worth noting here really the diversity of employment industries that have announced either expanding in place or coming into the community, from consumer packaged goods like the snack crackers of Legally Addictive, they're fantastic, to the organic beauty products of Life's Abundance, whose headquarters sits over on the South Slope, to our own Poppy's Popcorn, right, that we've all watched scale from a solopreneur on Merriman Avenue through the programs of Venture Asheville to last June, announcing an expansion that will consolidate her manufacturing with a $4.5 million investment, creating over 60 new jobs. You'll also see locally headquartered name brands like Industry 9 and East Fork, as well as multinationals like System Logistics and BorgWarner Turbo and the jet engine maker Pratt & Whitney, who, by the way, already have over 400 local employees under roof. They make engine components that reduce the jet fuel consumption of the GTF engine platform by 20% and therefore reduce the noxious emissions of air travel by over 50%. It's incredibly exciting technologies. And I'm excited for each of these employers to continue to grow and invest here in the Asheville community. On the next slide, you'll see that these outcomes are really the result of year-round programming by our staff that promote efficiencies, sustainable products and facilities, and progressive employment practices that invest in wage and benefits and education and skills development of our residents. On the next slide, I will transition to talk for a moment about our venture programming. Exciting to note that in only 10 years, Venture Asheville has graduated to date over 80 new startup businesses, created nearly 400 new jobs at extraordinary wages. Just as important, during their time in the Elevate incubator, our staff has helped facilitate over $58 million in outside the area angel and equity investment in companies that are headquartered here. This has empowered them and driven this handful of firms to generate over $110 million in lifetime sales revenues. These figures are astounding for a startup initiative that began just 10 years ago, proving that startups in Asheville are a vital and growing economic force. Just referencing our previous presenter from the county, Jeff Kaplan, our director, has chaired the MCCF, and that's a really vital part of the ecosystem and growing business in the region. On the next slide, you'll see that those outcomes really are supported through year-round programming that include 3 incubators, 2 of which have launched this year. An annual programming like the Venture 15, which is a celebration of the 15 fastest growing startups in the community. And thank you, Councilwoman Ullman, for joining us this year on stage for a quick presentation. And of course, in all we do, we work closely with the valuable partners listed here that share our commitment to the power of entrepreneurship in lifting families and communities of Asheville. On the next slide, I'm going to transition really to talk about 3 core workforce development initiatives of the EDC that focus on truly growing economic participation. And in a historically low unemployment market such as Buncombe County, this really has to be where we are focused with all of our energies. Next AVL, for example, is a professional mentorship initiative operated in partnership with 6 regional colleges. AB Tech actually joined our consortium this year. And it's modeled in large part on the city's CALA initiative that I've been proud to champion and host an intern now for over 16 years. The program aims to strengthen and retain this talented future workforce, in this case, when they're studying here in Asheville pursuing a college degree. Our annual enrollment this year includes 35 diverse and ambitious college students recruited from departments and student organizations that allow us to focus on first and family to attend college, recruit from immigrant communities and BIPOC communities, and many others. I'm really excited about the ability of this program to continue to scale given the great number of educational institutions within a short drive of where we sit today. On the next slide, launched in 2020, the Inclusive Hiring Partners is a resource to close the opportunity gap. We work closely with local agencies to connect Buncombe County residents experiencing significant employment barriers to jobs in equitable workplaces and high growth industries like manufacturing and healthcare. To date, the program has screened over 300 residents, has placed over 30, with an additional 100 currently in the pipeline and interview process. Pilot funding from Golden Leaf actually expired in July of last year, but the EDC board is committed to this cornerstone program and its 2 full-time staff members to continue to better connect our residents with meaningful employment. I'd like to also offer my special thanks to the 30 or so local employers that continue to work with us as certified inclusive hiring partners, which mean they guarantee an interview and feedback on the interview. So we have an iterative support process to lift people over barriers and into sustained employment. Thanks also to over 23 referral agencies today whose talents and passion really help drive this initiative. A few listed here include the Housing Authority, the City of Asheville, the YMI, Land of Sky, AB Tech, Operation Gateway, the Spark Foundation, and Community Action Opportunities, to name just a few. On the next slide, you'll see how this program has evolved in the last 12 months. Recognizing first and foremost that access to skills training, and credentials is a significant employment barrier for many residents, and one that we could actually more easily address. The EDC today serves as a backbone organization for a program called Accelerate Buncombe, together with partners like AV Tech, YMI, the Asheville Housing Authority, and the Land of Sky and Operation Gateway. With generous ARPA funding support from the county in January of last year, this program launched to provide two things: necessary income continuity while a resident pursues a credential, and the educational stipend to achieve that 7 to 8 week certification, obviously providing access to the higher wage employment opportunities that follow. This is a little bit of research and development, and to date, we have enrolled over 60 residents. We've graduated 33 with over 20 still in process. 12 of those have earned a new job or new promotion as a result of their certification. And with remaining funding, we anticipate serving an additional 15 to 25 residents in the final 6 months of the pilot project this year. In conjunction with so many partners like the P20 Council here in the market, really excited about the opportunity to continue to scale and grow this initiative as well. On the next slide, I'd share that as we pause and kind of look to what's next, right, in a community where growth is the subject of the hour, we will be updating through a process led by the board of the EDC, our strategic plan, something we call the AVL 5x5. We'll be doing it this fall, as we do every 5 years, and invite members of this committee and members of council to join us for that discussion and input and planning process as we seek to expand economic opportunity and also access to economic opportunity here in our hometown. Special thanks to city staff Nikki Reed and Rachel Taylor for their ongoing partnership and the stewardship of council for our 30-year partnership. Forgive me, Madam Vice Mayor, I believe I went a few minutes over. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Duncan? Or? Okay. Thank you very much, Duncan. I really appreciate that report because it actually sort of gives the community an idea of the different things that you do for the community. Greatly appreciate that, especially the individual job placements. I think that's real important for us to foster those types of relationships in the community. So I'm grateful for that.
I appreciate the partnership and honestly the vision of the city that has continued to help us hone our strategy on connecting our residents to the relative economic success of Buncombe County. So thank you for that longstanding partnership.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, we have number 4, which is the city property update and prioritization. That will be presented by Rachel Taylor, who's Economic Director, Development Manager.
All right, thanks so much. So Katie, next slide, please. So today we are here to talk about an interdepartmental staff work group who have come together on an organizational work plan item intended to move projects related to city-owned properties forward in a way that considers specific site limitations, context, and ability to meet the city's strategic goals, as well as staff's available capacity to fully execute these projects from start to finish. So we work together in an interdepartmental work group to develop this multi-year strategy to redevelop city-owned land. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide an overview of the redevelopment program, the proposed selection criteria, and the proposed project prioritization. So today we're seeking council's direction on the selection criteria and prioritization of 5 properties. After we receive this feedback, we will continue to provide regular updates related to specific projects within this portfolio to this committee, and we will continue to develop and implement action plans and activities related to each project. Next slide. So why are we working on these projects? We really want to build out this new program that will touch on the goals that intersect with many different departments, divisions, and are based on the specific conditions and context. We also want to begin work on this new program with some near-term wins and to be able to build capacity to address more projects that are slated for midterm or future redevelopment. This will allow us to catalyze progress on council's strategic priorities and goals from the city's other adopted plans. And the city's ownership of this land will really allow us to heavily influence development. We'll be focusing on strategically developing surplus or underutilized properties using clear action plans. And we'll do this through a multi-year and fluid strategy that focuses on our current needs, opportunities, as well as the chance to build community and partnerships. And we'll do this through hiring a redevelopment project manager. Hopefully by the next time I present, I can provide some updates on that progress. But the redevelopment project manager will lead the work and be supported by an interdepartmental staff work group. The project manager may also work with any third-party entities as may be required through the specific projects. We'll really lean into a policy and statutory framework for decision-making, and we will provide regular updates and look to receive regular feedback from council through this committee. Next slide. Next slide. So for this redevelopment portfolio, we want to make sure that the development of the selected properties are advancing council's strategic priorities and goals from other adopted plans. We want to make sure we're demonstrating clear rationale in the selection and prioritization of the properties. We want to ensure that implementation focuses on community engagement and partnership building, while maintaining the flexibility to assess the prioritization of the properties and adjust the work plan as needed. And again, we want to make sure that we are regularly communicating the progress of this portfolio with you all and with the community. Next slide. And the next one. So as we look into the what of this program, I wanted to touch on the urban renewal properties. So the city owns properties acquired through urban renewal or related redevelopment. And in particular, we've heard requests to focus on the properties located along South Charlotte Street. Staff wanted to acknowledge this request while also working within the broader context and relationship of these properties to the work of the Reparations Commission. And so in October of 2020, Council passed a moratorium on the sale of any city-owned properties that came from urban renewal. And that is until that there's a policy in place with recommendations from the Reparations Commission. And in a moment, I'll show the map, but there is a story map that shows the urban renewal and city-owned property, which provides so much more additional context and information about these properties. So staff's next step will be, as it relates to these properties, will be to work with the Reparations Commission on determining a policy and an approach for those parcels, really based on and grounded in that commission's recommendations. Next slide. And so here's a map of the 3 primary urban renewal areas, as you can see in that story map. Next slide. Excuse me. And so for this portfolio, looking forward, our selection rationale for the 5 key properties we highlight today are that we want a redevelopment approach that aligns with council's strategic plans and priorities. And we want to use this rationale to clearly answer the question of why are we selecting these properties. We are looking at properties that are considered ready for development or redevelopment, We also looked for the existence of small area plans that could be used to inform action steps, and the availability of resources to begin work on the projects, which may include funding, availability of funding, partnerships, and staff capacity. Next slide. And so with that in mind, the properties that we'll talk about today meet the program's guiding principles, aligned with one or more of Council's strategic priorities or comprehensive plan goals. They aligned with the Municipal Climate Action Plan. The properties were considered surplus, underutilized, vacant, or not slated for future use. We identified properties that were not acquired through urban renewal, and that there were a presence of small area plans or other existing plans that could inform action steps moving forward. We also assessed the presence of available funding, available partnerships, and available and knowledgeable staff. Next slide. So looking at our redevelopment program, we identified some properties for near-term redevelopment. And in this context, we are using near-term to consider a period of about 1 year to complete or make significant progress. So the first property we have is the historic fire station. And a little bit later in the presentation, we have maps, so we'll orient everyone to where that is. But that's the fire station on Merriman Avenue. And so we would look to complete some work on that project in the first 0 to 6 months of this work. And then we would look to the River Arts District parcels and really move this project forward in the 6 to 12 month period. We identified additional properties for midterm redevelopment. And so this would be considered a period of about 2 to 4 years to complete or make significant progress. And starting with Deaver View, the midterm activities would be assigned when we are able to assess the capacity of the new redevelopment project manager. And then we could also advance some other activities based on capacity, additional resources, and other factors that may influence our ability to implement the action items. Yes, Councilmember Turner.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you say Deaver View, do you mean the Housing Authority properties or the 40 acres next to it that the city owns?
It would be the city-owned property, and I will let Nikki step in if you've got.
I just wanted to know.
That's correct. You've got it, Rachel. The 65 Ford Street properties and the Cedar Hill properties that we've owned for a number of years. That's right.
Perfect. Thank you.
And so the other projects that would really fit in that midterm position would be Art Place and Haywood Page. And then looking towards the future, the properties that we could potentially consider for future redevelopment, that would be looking at a period of 5 or more years out, would be the Parkside property and the I-26 surplus properties. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a multi-year yet fluid strategy. So we would look to try to accommodate any adjustments to this prioritization based on opportunities to move some projects forward. Next slide. So for the historic fire station, the vision for this project would be to preserve a historic building and support a thriving economy. We're currently exploring potential partnerships with historic preservation organizations that could act as a broker to protect the historic value of this property if a future sale should occur. We're also looking to develop a partnership with an historic preservation organization to explore opportunities for the fire station. Ultimately, the goal for this project would be to have a successful partnership and to have sold the property with a long-term preservation easement. And next slide, Katie. So it's probably hard to see, it's a very high level overview of this 300 Merriman. As you can see, it's just north of Claxton Elementary School. And next slide. So this site is about 0.3 acres, and It does have a cell tower on the back of it, and it has some limitations around its ability for reuse. So while it is very valuable and its historic nature, preservation and renovation will be challenging for this building. And Katie, if you could go to the next slide. So we would want to make sure that this building is preserved and can be maintained, but do that in a way that that is strategic as well. And so this particularly aligns with the goals of the Municipal Climate Action Plan, which emphasize that real estate assets that may offer little reuse opportunities, but may be underutilized are highly vulnerable, and these are prime candidates for sale to other interested parties. So we're working to align the goals of this strategy with other existing plans. Next slide. So the second set of parcels in our near-term, our proposed near-term portfolio would be 4 River Arts District parcels. And so the vision for these would be to implement district plans with creative mixed-use redevelopment with a focus on housing. And so we are assembling on-file site due diligence for these riverside properties and compiling planning reference documents. Our next steps would be to engage the development community informally in advance of a formal RFP. This would allow us to generate advanced interest and demonstrate the city's desire to be a willing partner. And the goal for this would be to have an identified development partner with an adopted development proposal for the sites. Yes, Councilmember Turner.
I'm sorry, I hope it's okay to interrupt with questions. Is this the Riverside land that we originally had as a high impact site? It is, okay, thank you. Just making sure I'm getting the right ones.
And there'll be a couple of maps coming up, but yes, it does include that parcel as well as others.
Mm-hmm. And Katie, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, and we can talk a little bit about some of the limitations and context around these parcels. So we'll show you 4. We've got 2 here, the 347 Riverside Drive and 291 Riverside Drive. The total combined of all 4 of these parcels would be just over 3 acres. The limitations really center around the floodplain, brownfields, the proximity to the railroads. And so they do have very distinct challenges. However, they present a valuable opportunity to leverage the amazing work that has already been done in that area and continue to move that work forward. So Katie, if you can go to the next slide. So these are those same 2 properties from a slightly different angle. And next slide. And these are the street views of those 2 properties. Next slide. And here are the other 2 properties. You can see the proximity to the railroad there. And next slide, Katie. And here they are again from a different angle. So we have done a lot of work around the greenway and the infrastructure in that area. And so this helps to kind of situate that in the context of the work that's already been done. All right, and next slide. And here's the street view of those 2 parcels. Next slide. So both of these near-term projects align with 1 or more of Council's strategic priorities and comprehensive plan goals. And next slide. Next one, sorry. And so we would work to, given Council's direction, we would work to take action to move these projects forward and would want to conduct activities on any midterm and future term projects as these projects are completed or as our capacity increases and opportunities allow. Next slide. So our next steps would look like relying on existing resources, including interdepartmental work groups, our redevelopment project manager, and existing budgetary resources to move these projects forward. And we would seek council's approval on any necessary contracts and approving those contracts. And then in year 2, we would work to assess the resources and progress of these near-term projects to determine and secure resources needed to complete them. Next slide. So again, this work will be led by a redevelopment project manager who will be supported by an interdepartmental work group. And we want to really ground this work in a proposed framework for an actionable yet flexible multi-year strategy to accomplish the goals of this work plan project. And again, we're seeking feedback from this committee, and we'll continue to develop and implement those action plans and activities related to each project. Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Ullman.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm excited for this work. I feel like how we look at city-owned land is really important and can be really strategic as our community grows rapidly, that we can use our public benefit for good to help us. I guess I have a couple questions on like the fundamental framing of what you're laying out for your program. In the slide deck, the only segment that really talked to the goals for what you're trying to accomplish are tied to the comp plan. And I feel like over and over, we keep running into a challenge where the comp plan is meant to be a 20-year vision, 20-plus year vision plan. And to me, those aren't really precise goals. And so as I read this, I see really smart work, really thoughtful work from staff. But it's hard for me to tell a citizen what we're going to get out of this, because the comp plan goals are very ethereal. And so I wonder if there's a place for this committee to spend some time setting something that's more tangible or tactical goals so that we have real focus, because I feel like there is a risk to put a lot of time into this thoughtful plan and have the impact be really diffuse. So for example, what am I talking about? To me, I would love to see a redevelopment plan that's focusing on leveraging municipal land to produce housing. I would love to see, so 4 things would be my wish list for specific goals that are more targeted than comp plan. Producing housing, municipal, leveraging our land for economic development, leveraging our land to actually improve and track tax base, and then balancing our needs with other municipal purposes. So I didn't really see any conversation like, we need to relocate the transit garage. We might need to relocate the Thomas Wolfe. So to me, I think it would be really useful before I'm excited about this going forward to have that next level of policy direction, because I feel like we're not doing our jobs on council if we rely only on the comp plan at 50,000 foot, and then staff does all this work where I'm not sure where this redevelopment stuff will land given the blurriness of what the target is.
Okay, Stephanie, would you like to comment?
I thought I was going to have this answer for our councilwoman, but I'm going to give you a half answer or something that might help you feel a little bit better with the frame. Like moving forward, we want to start having conversations that the comprehensive plan contains a variety of amendments. And those amendments look like the GAP plan, the upcoming Parks and Recreation plan, the affordable housing plan. And as we talk about we can use the comprehensive plan almost like as a shorthand to speak about all of the different planning activities that we've done, some of which are much more strategic and are a little bit more on that granular level. So that's what I wanted to share with you, because I think that staff feels aligned with what you're saying. But then I'll also just, the rest of it will be feedback, and our group is going to get together this Tuesday and we'll talk about your comment and any of these other comments because they're great. Thank you.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? We're moving in the direction of we've set a comp plan, it's important, and we're having that more interim goal setting process happening in different venues. But for this project in particular, like seeing kind of the order of your near term to midterm responsibilities, how much effort are they going to take? And again, to me, I want to see producing housing, economic development, improving tax base, and managing and balancing our other municipal land needs. And like, I don't know from this presentation if and how we'll do that. And then like when I look at the historic fire station, like how much time is that going to take? If that's a lot of time, that would not be the first out the gate to me. I would rather see us double down and put way more effort into Art Place. That's a key priority for me. And so some of the terms might be, some cakes just take longer to bake. And so you're still working on Art Place. It's just going to bake a little bit longer, and that would make sense. But I think that, yeah, so I'm just kind of circling around on that. And if it's you'll come back to us with more crisp goals in a second presentation, that would be really helpful. Or if we have a discussion now of, I mean, councilwomen, I'd love to hear, what do you want to achieve out of this that could help with their next steps?
But the only thing I think with the fire station, if I remember correctly, that it more or less it's not really going to take as much time, because basically what they're doing is actually sort of what do you call it, building this out to the Preservation Society, who basically sort of guide and dictate where you go with that. Is that what I'm hearing, Rachel?
Yes. So the historic fire station, we kind of bumped that up on the prioritization because, as you said, that cake is a little bit further along, and it would be quicker to move forward on that project compared to some of these other more comprehensive projects that we're looking at down the road. It would also, we've got staff on hand that could get started on that and could make some progress on that project. It would also give our team a little bit of time to kind of build their skills and build their muscles in this redevelopment type of work.
I'll just share a couple brief thoughts. You know, the Matthews Ford site, 319 Biltmore comes to mind. You know, we don't have, at least in my window of tenure, we don't have a lot of experience redeveloping city-owned properties, and the partnerships and the outcomes. The more clear we can be at the beginning, I think the less likely you all as staff and the community in general getting a project across the finish line will be easier, because, you know, as we saw with 319, it took a number of years. The entire council had changed practically. The outcomes were somewhat shuffled in the middle. Home ownership was a wild card. So, you know, the more that we can do on the front end to be clear about the goals and get the community behind them, the committees and the council, I think will be smoother, faster, less cumbersome, less expensive. And I just say that from my experience with 319. And to Maggie's point of like, how would we prioritize? Like, if this fire station, you know, people have inquired about it for decades. Like, when can it be for sale? Some people want to make it a bar, all this stuff. To be preserved and sold with an outcome or a goal for the sale proceeds, simple enough, right? That's a pretty standard process. But when we talk about like Ford Street, and then we layer in the adjacency to D review and what those outcomes are, and is it purpose built, and are we going to retain any ownership? Like, those just, that kind of criteria would dramatically affect my opinion on what we would move forward and prioritize. So I don't feel like I have enough information. We're clear on the outcome of the sale of the fire station. I can quickly be like, okay, that's great. But there's so much more work on the front end for the others that are just raw land. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that helps you. It's more of a, we're going to need more information, in my opinion. And, you know, we didn't even see the Charlotte Street, which is, I think, what happened to kind of get this conversation rolling again, was council's inquiry as a group of what's happening with Charlotte Street and can we move it along? And so it's not on the radar. It's not on those lists. So I don't know if it just disappeared into the ethers. So some of that comes to mind as well. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yeah, and just kind of riffing on that, my sense is the Charlotte Street isn't on the list because there's this moratorium on any land that was acquired through urban renewal. And I had a question in my notes about that of, is there a timeline on the moratorium? Has there been an explicit and direct ask of the Reparations Commission? Because as I've followed along and read of their work, I haven't seen anything directly tied to that. And so I know that it's hard work that they're doing, and we want the group to lead. And I don't know. I would be really upset if I end my term 3 years from now and we haven't had the conversation of what to do with this land. So I just kind of entertain the question of like, have we been direct with an ask of the Reparations Commission? Because right now a moratorium on a bunch of city-owned land. I just would love to know when we're expecting to see progress and when we'll be getting insight from them on that land, because it's urgent to repair what we've done and to redevelop where it's appropriate. So.
And Maggie, I'm thinking that particular parcel has existing infrastructure and facilities that need to be relocated. So it's almost like our responsibility as council is to get it ready for when the Reparations Commission is ready with a recommendation. Like the upheaval and reconstruction or relocation of that stuff could take 5-10 years. I mean, almost we're just doing readiness preparation. We're not even like, I'm okay that they don't have that goal at the Reparations Commission to unleash upon us, because we would be nowhere near ready.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that.
Good point.
But I don't want it to just sit idle for 10 years. And frankly, 10 years ago, I had this conversation with Matthew Ball. So here we are. And I don't want it to be another 10 years. And that's, I think, kind of where I'm coming from with some of these more critical and life-altering parcels.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have something from the Reparations Committee, prior to the end of the year. So, we would need to sort of give that a chance to play out. But I do hear you, and I will say that during our earlier meeting, we discussed a lot of the city-owned land and the housing aspect of it, but it's going to take partnerships and things of that nature. So I think that where Rachel, we were just sort of identifying these parcels, and basically sort of we can start having conversations and thinking about how we will develop and how that will proceed. So I think that's the beginning of the conversation, if I got it right, Nikki, that we're just sort of opening those up, that's we're trying to gather more information, because they don't have all the information either. They're just sort of working through, and hopefully the project manager, whoever you're planning on bringing in to actually oversee the projects, will help with the which direction to go. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yes, I think it's great for us to hear this kind of conversation and hear this feedback so that we know how to either be clear about the goals with each property and what we can hope to achieve, and then at what point council then gets to direct the next step or has the opportunity then to think about how they want to position the parcel to achieve what goals. So this is really exactly what we were needing to hear as staff to then be able to direct our work. So I'm grateful for the conversation.
Let me just tag one last thought on there. As we are preparing for potential municipal facility bond overhaul, is relocation of these facilities on South Charlotte Street even on that list? And I don't think that it is, and that's kind of like, if we're looking 10 and 20 years out at facilities and just restoration, whatever it is, some growth, is this even in that timeline somewhere? And I don't think that it is. So just bringing that up as the interconnectedness of all of this. And I think there is political will on council to do something with South Charlotte Street, or at least be the group readying it.
Part of what I hear, Sage, in your comments, and I agree, although I'm curious to see how staff has been wrestling with this, is there's, I think the thinking that I'm seeing you prepare is around redevelopment. And I think there's a tension of redevelopment and municipal relocation, right? And so I want to make sure that before we're, for example, the places down in the RAD, is that really ripe for redevelopment, or do we need to relocate municipal facilities there? Like, I don't know. And I don't know that I'm advocating for that. My point is, it can be hard for me to think about redevelopment without the context of what we might need for our facilities at some point. And I understand the more you zoom out, the more complicated things can get and the harder it can be to actually do work and get stuff done. And I want to get stuff done. But that type of context of in the criteria for redevelopment? How does this connect to balancing other municipal purposes? Those other points I brought up too. It's exciting. We're off to a good start. And Vice Mayor, as you were saying, like conversation zero, that we're part of, y'all been working on this for quite some time. But I think this type of long range thinking is with a pathway to like short term doing is really good work.
Very good. Very robust conversation. I think that it's something that's needed and something the community needs to hear, because a lot of people are really concerned about, city on land. What are we doing with it? And so by starting these conversations, then, people will become more engaged and get more, input, and we can move forward. So thank you very much for that presentation. Okay. And if we don't have any other questions, we'll move on to the next one, which is the grant funded project update, contract consideration. And Dana Frankel, of the Downtown Project Manager, give us an update, the Millen. And she'll also give us the progress on boosting the block project, and also including recommendations for the spin.
Great. Thank you and good afternoon, committee members. My name is Dana Frankel and I serve as Downtown Project Manager in the Planning and Urban Design Department. As Vice Mayor said, I'm here to provide you with updates on projects that were funded by a grant from the Mellon Foundation, including more details on the largest of those in terms of funding, which we're calling Boosting the Block, and to seek your recommendation to move forward to full council for authorization to execute a contract with a community facilitator as the first major spend in the Boosting the Block project. So, next slide, please. In September 2023, City Council adopted the Pack Square Plaza Vision Plan, which was developed through a planning and engagement process led by the McAdams Company along with city and county staff. As that plan was being finalized, the city received a $3 million grant from the Mellon Foundation's Monument Project Initiative to move specific elements of the plan forward. And we've laid those elements out here, which I'll just talk through briefly. So one of those, the Boosting the Block, is design, engineering, and construction of a placemaking project that better connects the block with Pack Square, along with investments that integrate art, culture, and history into a cohesive and truthful narrative about the neighborhood. Also, funding for design and engineering for Pack Square Plaza. We worked on, some concept ideas and concept plans in the vision plan, but this funding will take that to the next step of developing design and engineering drawings. And finally, the grant is funding a partnership with Buncombe County to launch a series of programs that improve the quality and quantity of history and inclusive storytelling in our community, really expanding a program that they have already started and have underway. Next slide, please. So a little bit more detail on what the Boosting the Block project is. Here are some of our anticipated outcomes, our major anticipated outcomes. A physical gateway and cultural corridor between Pack Square and the block. Enhanced public spaces and programming that authentically narrates the past, present, and future of the block. Consensus and implementation of neighborhood identity and marketing for the block, an increased capacity of neighborhood anchors to shape and influence the future of this area. Next slide, please. So broadly, I've included some milestones here in an overall about 2.5 year schedule, but note that when we get the community facilitator on board, we'll look to them to work with us and with the community to develop a detailed work plan for the length of this project. So during calendar year 2024, we will hire hopefully soon this community facilitator who will help with all aspects of project of engagement and planning and implementation moving forward, really to support the project and our work with the community. But we anticipate a group learning trip to take a look at another city who's had some successes in a similar type of project. We hope to do some temporary pop-up activations. Maybe those are design and space related. Maybe that's a little bit more programmatic, but we'll be kind of trying some things within this first year. And in some of those, in some of that early work, hoping to develop at least some conceptual design ideas and options for moving forward. Calendar year 2025, we would plan to get further along in aspects of design and any associated programming, and to hire a design build contractor to develop design and construction plans. 2026 is when we would like to be doing construction, implementing the plans that have been developed, and to have a community celebration. Next slide, please. So the first proposed investment in the Boosting the Block project is hiring a community facilitator who will lead engagement and support all aspects of community organizing, planning, design, and implementation of project deliverables. So much of the pre-planning for this project really began during the public engagement process for Pack Square Visioning, but also over the last several months with community stakeholders, specifically with the Block Collaborative, a group of stakeholders on the block, and also between city and county staff. So in terms of the hiring process, a selection committee was assembled that included city and county staff, YMI, Eagle Market Street Development Corporation, Mount Zion, and Noir Collective. And we launched an RFP process in mid-November. We received 11 strong responsive proposals. The group narrowed that down and has gone through 2 rounds of interviews. And now we are positioned to move forward with the highest ranked firm. The community facilitator is anticipated to work for the duration of the project. And so from here, staff would like to move forward to full city council to seek authorization to execute what will be a $180,000 contract. And we are seeking your recommendation to do so. I think that's our last slide. But with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Stephanie Dahl is here. She managed the Pack Square Plaza visioning process and also is overseeing Mellon Foundation implementation overall.
My first comment is it's a good thing we got this money. Goodness gracious. What would we have done otherwise, you know? Talk to me about the hefty design fees.
So,
I mean, I know when we get into some of these big facilities that are historic in nature, you get heftier percentages for design fees, but that's really a lot.
Steph, can I ask you to speak to that?
I can. So as part of applying for the grant from the Mellon Foundation, we had to do a pretty lengthy, I don't want to say lengthy, but in-depth and double-checked. We had to have a third-party cost estimator look over our potential costs for a capital project in this area. And so we worked both with our, for the park, we worked with our parks department, we worked with our capital projects department, and then we had someone from McAdams look over our estimates. And as you know, it's expensive to do capital work here in Asheville. And so the fees that are associated with design and construction, you know, it is the design part of it is it includes construction. That may be the part that you are missing. I just went ding, ding, ding. Yes.
Oh, that's different. Thank you.
That includes construction.
We have a hidden slide here that kind of breaks down the overall budget for Boosting the Block. I don't know if that complicates things to bring that up.
No, really, that answers it, including construction. Raises my question. Okay. Thank you.
I was kind of wondering, hearkening back to the conversation we just had, because, you know, in different meetings, I'm talking about a similar area of town. How are we ensuring that the work on this boosting the block is dovetailing with the evolving thinking for the Parkside parcel redevelopment as it relates to the muni building or possible other municipal needs that are speculative right now? How are we dovetailing all of that?
I'll speak to that as well because I'm on all of those project teams, or that's mostly how we're doing it. We're just coordinating across departments as a best practice. It's funny how much work we're doing. It's really all the same people. And so we're sharing kind of what those goals are and doing our best to coordinate them. One great thing about this is that we've been seeing this as almost like it's a capacity building effort, right? So as we work with the folks on the block and really understand what they're looking for, we're going to be better prepared once we get to Parkside. And if we end up, same thing while we're working with East End, Valley Street Neighborhood Association on some things as we kind of look at connecting the two places through any redevelopment along Eagle Street and at Charlotte Street. This is the flower that will come from the seed.
Great, thanks.
I'll just add that I think with the resources of this grant, we're in a great position to be communicating, working really closely with the block, with this community who obviously has a major stake in anything that happens within this immediate area. So just with the communications enhancements and also with the capacity building, I think we're all better positioned to have a community conversation about the future of this area and these properties.
So if
Do you all you need action on this, right? You need us to
if someone like to make it, yeah.
I mean, the language is just that we move this forward to council, right? You just need a motion that
That's what the facilitator said. I think that's right. For the
we didn't have a suggested motion.
Just recommend to the council.
Yeah, I move that we recommend that council, I guess, hear this presentation as well and consider these recommendations from. Is that detailed enough?
No, to approve the community facilitator contract. What we're actually asking for is the contract.
Isn't that what's going to council though? Okay.
Just the contract, just the approval for the contract, not for the.
Yeah, I think approval of the contract is what we're asking for. We maybe wouldn't, yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's $180,000 contract that would run with the project. It's a 30-month contract for a community facilitator. And we've gone through the selection process and we have a firm that we'd like to move forward with.
Okay, so that's all you need, just the contract. My apologies. Okay, so then I will make a motion that council recommend approval at council for a $180,000 contract to last 30 months. I think that's enough.
For the community facilitator. Great, Sage.
For the community facilitator, sorry. For the community facilitator, period.
I second.
Okay, great. Got a motion and a second. And now I'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Turner,
Aye.
Councilwoman Owen,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So motion passes.
I've gotten spoiled by the motions on screen. Sorry.
So at this time, what we will do, if we don't have any more questions on this project, we'll see if we have anyone in the queue. Katie, anyone?
One moment, let me double check. No, we do not.
Great.
And Sandra, I had a question for staff. Do we know when PED is going to talk about transit again? Because my understanding is there's been this ongoing work on transit feasibility, this, that, and the other. So curious kind of the timeline that we'll have that conversation next. I don't see it in an upcoming agenda.
Okay, great.
I was looking at the work plan, but Rachel may know the answer to that. So.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for letting me crash PED today. It's been nice to sit on a different committee. We're actually going to have a pretty detailed conversation with full council as part of your retreat. We're going to do a deep dive into transit during the budget overview section. So we'll have that conversation next week, and then we'll get some more, hopefully specific direction from you all regarding how best to continue those conversations past the retreat.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, or comments? If not, Richard. See you all.
Thank you.